Hi, I'm Phil Sinclair, showing you a little bit more about some typical scaffolds that you'll see on site. This here's got a mixture of scaffold within the design. This one's what they call a piggyback, so that's two bays together, lengthwise. And it's also used as a buttress, so you need to have less ties to the building. It helps secure it by a bigger base for stability. It's also braced on the ends and on the face. This has got some interesting parts to this scaffold, highlighting some different design aspects that you might see on site. Because of the location of this scaffold, we've got a fire hydrant in the corner, so it was important to keep access to that in case of an emergency. And there's also an access door behind me as well. So to keep a wide access for safety, we needed to remove a scaffold standard, which would normally be standing right here. To do that, we've done what they call a spur. So it's been spurred up from the bottom in two directions to support that standard, so there's no longer any structural member below. But in doing so, it's important that we remember that this is all that's supporting that standard. So there's some ties that need to be carefully done on this spur, and they do what we call a check coupler. So it's an extra fitting that goes on here that stops this tube from sliding. So they're done top and bottom and in both directions. Also with this scaffold, again for the same reason that we've got a fire hydrant in the corner and access, this bay's been cantilevered all the way across. So to do that, we've utilised a ladder beam. So there's a steel ladder beam up above my head. So that's picking up the two standards that would normally be in this corner here as well. Again, that's to keep a good access away from this fire hydrant. So in case of emergency, they've got clear access in here. These are the sort of things that people need to take into account when they're planning for a scaffold, either in a new build or in a refurbishment type construction. It's important that all the assets are protected and accessible. Same thing with the ladder beam. We've got check couplers depending on which way the load is on that beam. So it's important that even if you're not sure which way they are supposed to go, that you can recognise that there's actually one that's been fitted. If you can recognise that, you're halfway there. Other issues that happen on a scaffold that you need to be aware of in a safety sense, whenever you approach a scaffold that's in place, you need to be aware of all the components that are still there. So there's some giveaway points on this one. We can look across and we'll see evidence of there's a tie bar in the bottom on the ground. So that's been removed from the hop-up, which is in the front here. So these boards up here are now not restrained. So the problem being is without that tie bar, there's nothing stopping those boards from sliding straight off the front of the scaffold. There's nothing also restraining that hop-up, so it can spread apart and the boards can fall off. So that's a high risk problem. And that trades remove those all the time to access in front, but they don't put them back. They throw them on the ground or they leave them on the deck of the scaffold, and that's a real big problem, potentially for the next person that comes along who doesn't know that it's missing. So you need to be able to look and find that. Moving further down the scaffold, we see it's got a nice face brace, so there's one every third bay, so that's fantastic, that's all the way along. But looking down, we've got some more debris, which is also concerning. So down here, we've got some tube held together with a 90. Now that's commonly used as a tie to secure the scaffold to the building. So that straight away alerts you that this, and there's another coupler, that's been removed from the scaffold. So that's where it was fixed to the building. So a trade or someone unlicensed has taken this off to do their job, but they haven't put it back. They haven't alerted anyone, they've just removed it. So this becomes unsecured and potentially unsafe. Another thing, also slightly alarming, is there's a loose ledger in here. So that's been left underneath the scaffold. So if we come up a little bit further, a scaffold has nodes, which are these, or lugs as they sometimes are called. And everywhere where there's transom and a deck, we have a ledger. So that creates a ring, as they call it, and it structurally ties the scaffold together. Now in this instance, this outside one's been removed. So again, that's a potential risk because that's been removed, that's weakening the structure of the scaffold. Boards potentially could come out, you can fall out. There's all those types of issues attached to that. So again, something to look for. If there's materials on the ground, make sure you can see or try and spot where it might have been removed from. Here behind me is a typical stair access. Nice and easy to climb up and down. Down below there's a step down, so you're not straining to get up. You can quite easily climb up and down. Fully guardrailed, and it's also ledgered all the way up the outside, so there's no potential or no opportunity for anyone to fall out the side of the scaffold. Also, there's a triple handrail at the far end, so that even people coming down the stair are protected from falling off the end. There's the end bracing, so the end of every scaffold run has bracing, so it's up there as well as a structural element to tie the scaffold together. And the last but not least, just to help recognise, we saw that tie on the ground, and you might be able to look up through the middle there, and you can see one at the far end just above the deck. That's a tie sticking out onto the roof off the last standard. You just see it up amongst the gum trees there. So that's what's been removed and has been thrown on the ground. So this end is secured still, but somewhere through the middle we've got one that's missing. That's just a few of the things you should be looking for. Braces, ties, check couplers. Make sure we're fully decked. We've got tie bars in place. If all those things are right, then you're much safer on a scaffold. Thanks for listening.